enriching an entitled elite who were producing music for which there was little public appetite. My guest was a co-founder of the Hecklers movement and believes that the dominance of atonal music prevents classical music from reinventing itself. Writers throughout history have fondly ruminated on the beauty of handwritten letters, as poignantly illustrated when the author Catherine Mansfield wrote to her brother, "This is not a letter, it is my arms around you for a brief moment." Is that rich and cherished form of communication now at risk? I'll be speaking to the founder of London Letters. And finally, as part of my Taste of Britain series, I'll be speaking to the connoisseurs Jessica Summer, who will bring some bottles to aid my comprehension of wine taxes. All of that ahead, but first your news headlines with Sam Francis.
Michael, thank you very much and good afternoon from the GB Newsroom. 2 minutes past 12 and we start with the latest developments from the Middle East today, where Israel says it is poised for further aggression. Its war cabinet is preparing to meet in the next half hour to discuss its response to Iran's major airstrikes. Iran is now threatening to launch a much larger attack if Israel retaliates. State media from Iran is also carrying a warning for the US, saying American bases would be targeted if Washington backs Israel's military response. Overnight, RAF jets were used to shoot down Iranian drones, most of which were intercepted without causing any significant damage, though a small number did reach Israeli territory, critically injuring a 7-year-old girl and causing some damage to an army base. Earlier, former chair of the Defence Select Committee, Tobias Ellwood, told us that Israel's defence capabilities were key to containing the strike last night.
By any measure, this was a brazen state-on-state attack, harnessing the latest tools of modern warfare, those drones and missiles, to its full. The scale of which, targeting much of Israel, much of the country, would have caused a colossal loss of life had it not been for Israel's sophisticated Iron Dome air defense system. So Iran clearly now wants to draw a line under this after its attacks and so forth. But there's no doubt that this conflict in the Middle East is escalating.
Meanwhile, Rishi Sunak is set to join a meeting of G7 leaders for urgent talks to discuss the international response to Iran's attack. Leaders joining that meeting from the United States, Canada, Italy, Britain, France, Germany and Japan. They're due to hold a video meeting later this afternoon. More on that with our Home and Security editor Mark White shortly. It's also being reported Iran's foreign ministry has summoned the British ambassador. Here, though, Government Minister Victoria Atkins has told GB News that Britain will stand with the people of Israel.
We will be working across our free democracies across the world to ensure that we stand with Israel, but we do so to try and de-escalate the tensions in the region, because nobody wants to see an escalation in the sorts of military activities that we have seen.
In other news, Angela Rayner is facing mounting pressure over her two homes row after a former aide told police that she had not told the truth about her real home. Her former chief advisor has given a statement to Greater Manchester Police, contradicting her claims. Matt Finnegan said that he was in no doubt that the Labour MP's actual home in 2014 was with her then husband, not a former council house where she was registered to live. This week, police launched an investigation looking into possible breaches of electoral law. The Deputy Labour leader's promised, though, to step down if it's determined she did commit a criminal offence, but said she has followed all the rules at all times. Sir Keir Starmer also says he has full confidence in her. The family of a man who killed 6 people in a stabbing spree at a shopping centre in Sydney yesterday have described his actions as truly horrific. Police believe 40-year-old Joel Couchy suffered from schizophrenia and had used drugs, including methamphetamine and psychedelics. 5 people, 4 women and a man, died at the scene of that attack yesterday. And another woman, a mother of a 9-month-old baby, later died in hospital. We understand that child who was attacked is understood to now be recovering well. The family of the suspect have released a statement in support of the police officer who killed him, saying she was only doing her job. The Premier of the state of New South Wales, Chris Minns, has paid tribute to members of the public.
Many people would be showing real anger at so many people having been killed and real loss of life. And the individual stories of those that have been killed that have been reported in the media are heartbreaking. I kind of want to search for a silver lining, but it has been incredible to see complete strangers jump in, run towards the danger, put their own lives in harm's way to save someone that they've never met before. And look, there's not too many positives to take out of a horrifying event, but we've got some wonderful people in our city.
And finally, Turkish officials have launched an investigation and detained 13 people after a deadly cable car collision. If you're watching on television, you can see here the moment a helicopter rescued one of the last remaining passengers that was stranded mid-air during that incident. One person was killed, 10 others were also injured when the cable car collided with a broken pole, ripping the pod open and sending people inside, plummeting to the rocks below. For the latest stories, do sign up to GB News Alerts. Just scan that code there on your screen, or if you're listening on radio, go to our website, gbnews.com/alerts.
Well, as we were hearing there in the news read by Sam Francis, Rishi Sunak is set to join a meeting of G7 leaders for urgent talks amid rising tensions in the Middle East after Iran attacked Israel last night. I'm now joined by GB News' Home and Security Editor, Mark White. Mark, what is the latest in particular on the G7 summit?
Well, that G7 summit, as you say, will be getting underway this afternoon. A telephone summit that's being chaired by the US President Joe Biden. The latest breaking news that we can bring to you is confirmation from the British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak that RAF jets did indeed shoot down drones that were launched from Iran towards Israel last night. We had reports that the UK had got involved alongside the US and other countries in helping Israel out, but the government here had not confirmed that actually any aircraft from the UK had struck any of those hostile threats coming towards Israel. Now that confirmation from Rishi Sunak that they have indeed taken out a number of drones. And also, of course, the Ministry of Defence, the Defence Secretary Grant Shapps, confirming that they are bolstering the RAF presence for Operation Shader. Op Shader has been underway for a number of years now in Iraq and Syria, dealing with the threat from Daesh, Islamic State, that extremist threat that still rumbles on in that area. These Typhoon jets operate out of Cyprus. Now they're being bolstered by some more combat jets and some more tanker aircraft from the UK as well, expecting the possibility of a significant escalation in the hours and days ahead.
Thank you very much indeed, Mark White. The former Irish Taoiseach, Leo Varadkar, stepped down this week, and avoiding an Irish goodbye, he stated that the estimated cost of €400 billion over the next 20 years will be a small price to pay for a united Ireland. A study published on the 4th of April suggested it would cost Ireland more than £17 billion every year for 2 decades if Dublin immediately raised social security benefits and public sector wages across Ireland to match the levels in Northern Ireland. The departed Taoiseach believes that unification should not be about cost. Well, I don't think that he sympathised with that argument when Leavers made it about Brexit. But it strikes me as an important insight. Would American revolutionaries in 1776 have been deterred from severing their connection with the British Crown had they been told at the time that it might make them poorer in the short term? I very much think not. Yet establishment politicians fail to understand political emotion, and they fall back on telling voters that this will cost you. Cue Project Fear. I'm joined now by Darren Grimes, who was a Brexit campaigner and a GB News presenter. Do you take my point that it seems that political establishments don't quite get political emotion. They don't understand that some people simply want a thing, whether it's unity, whether it's independence, and that they're not bothered about what that costs them in the pocket.
I very much do, and I would argue that actually I imagine the Irish government right now with Leo Varadkar's replacement. Liz Truss once referred to Leo Varadkar as the tea sock by mistake, and I imagine there are lots of Irish politicians, Michael, that wish Leo Varadkar would put a sock in it, because actually, whilst he was in office, none of these themes were brought out. He was very much part of saying that actually Brexit would be a project that makes the United Kingdom poorer, that we would be less secure and all the rest of it in the short to medium term. But actually, a lot of people looking at that ballot paper on June 23rd, 2016, they were told, as you well know, Michael, by every organisation with an acronym, that they would be less well off. They wouldn't be able to go through fast queues to get to European destinations. But they still said, look, I happen to believe that my nation being able to take back control, to have its own sovereignty, to not have foreign courts dictate what can and can't happen in my country, and actually have elected officials accountable to the British public that are in control. And they voted for it. And I remember there was one quote by Sir Michael Caine after the referendum. And he said, and he was derided for it, Michael, in much of the established political and media class and tabloids and all the rest of it. And he had said, I'd rather be a poor master than a rich servant. Now, a lot of people pointed out, well, he's a multi-millionaire, but he never used to be, right? This is a man who knew what it was like to grow up with nothing. I think there are a lot of people in this country today who feel that they don't have very much, but what they do have is their country, and they're immensely proud of the project that is the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. And those principles, they're not willing to sell. Not for a few points on GDP. We can't be reduced to spreadsheets. And I think that's what politicians try to do all too often.
There are many reasons why the Brexit referendum here in 2016 was won or lost, depending on your point of view. But it very much struck me, simply as an observer, that one side had a certain amount of passion. Mm-hmm. They had a vision about, what an independent Britain with an accountable democracy would look like. Whereas the people who wanted to remain didn't want to express the passion. There was a passion, actually. There was a passion about a united Europe, but they didn't want to talk about that. And it was the mismatch of passion that I thought was rather striking during that campaign. So here's Leo Varadkar kind of rather stirring this up, because, yes. I mean, if there is passion for Irish unity, I can well see how people would say, that's worth 400 billion euros over 20 years.
Well, so can I, absolutely. It's their raison d'etre in many parts of that part of the world. The Brexit point, I mean, the Project Fear campaign, they had absolutely no positive message or vision to sell. It was UK influence within the European Union can prevent it from becoming what it always ultimately set out to be, which is a united Europe. And we all said, hang on a minute, I don't wish to be part of that project. That certainly isn't what people voted for when they voted to join the then EEC. And the narrative, there is no philosophy, there is no principle in politics anymore, there is no vision. That's what's sorely lacking from many political parties across the spectrum. I couldn't say to you right now what I believe Sir Keir Starmer stands for. I couldn't say to you what Rishi Sunak stands for, other than basically keeping the status quo. Now, the status quo doesn't appear to be working for a lot of people. A lot of people feel incredibly left behind. And I think Brexit not only was about leaving the European Union, but was about a recognition of that, about people saying that actually I do want to believe in something, I do want more of a vision in this country, and taking back control therefore resonated with them. So actually having that stern belief and principle where we had politicians standing up and saying that actually what British people have stood for and believed in over centuries is worth fighting for, is worth something, and not just being relegated to some European federalist project.
The other thing that struck me about the referendum was it was simply the first time that people have been asked a question for many, many decades in which the answer apparently was going to depend upon their vote. It was going to be actually implemented according to how they voted. Obviously, there were many problems in the execution of that. And I think they were so overwhelmed, I mean, so thrilled in a way and so exasperated that they'd not had the opportunity for 50 years that they simply seized that opportunity. But I wonder why people, you know, if you and I have these insights, if now Leo Varadkar has this insight, I wonder why politicians so doggedly stick to Project Fear. They think it's the answer to everything. I mean, I'm absolutely sure that if there's another Scottish referendum, the unionists, those people organising the unionist campaign, will tell the Scots who want to be independent that it's going to cost them an arm and a leg. And many Scottish voters won't care, because what they want is independence.
Yes, absolutely. But I think it comes down to that's what they think works, right? It's the pound and pence. It doesn't work over values and liberty, frankly. That's what it's all about. Especially from you mentioned the American context during rule under the British Crown, the Scottish context, the Brexit context, the Irish context. It's all about freedom from what you view to be the oppressor. Now, we can argue whether or not the United Kingdom is indeed an oppressor. I don't think it is. But it's about those principles and values. And politicians don't have that anymore, because actually I think we've ended up with this bizarre set of PPE identikit politicians that basically operate on spreadsheets and sound bites instead of actually believing in something and fighting for it and spending a political career trying to bring it about. Dare I say that's what Nigel Farage did, and he was derided much for it. But look what it got him. 30 years ago I was put on this planet, he was setting up UKIP.
It got him onto GB News. I think that Leo Varadkar has done us a good turn, actually, by highlighting this point. I thank you very much, Darren Grimes, for coming on Sunday morning. After the break, I'll be speaking to the composer, Keith Burstein, about his 30-year-long campaign against atonal classical music, and how the establishment's grip on classical music is now being challenged by people like him.
Britain's Newsroom. Weekday mornings from 9:30.
One more story in. Milton Keynes, absolute chaos in the city. 300-odd youths arrested, or at least involved in a
stampede.
A stampede. Yeah, what's been going on?
A stampede through the...
there we are.
This is the video. So this is a stampede through a shopping centre in Milton Keynes. I think, Amy, you live there, don't you? You live nearby.
For those on radio, we can see literally hundreds, scores of kids.
I think there are about 300 kids.
Are they in school uniform?
Yeah, quite a few.
This is as they've broken up from school, presumably.
Security tried to intervene. They've been accused of being heavy-handed. But I think this speaks to the fact that the landscape of youth services has just been decimated, and there's literally nothing for kids.
So, hang on, whoa. You think that this has happened because social services have been diluted?
Youth services.
This is because there's no police around, there's no oversight, there's no deterrent, and 300 kids think that they can run through a shopping centre, frightening shoppers out of their lives.
Going to a shopping centre.
Amy, sorry, my kids would not be behaving like that because there's no ping pong available at the local.
Aren't your kids like age 4 and 5? These are teenagers, and our teenagers are headed into a world where there are no leisure services.
There are nothing to do with crime.
If
we up the ante on basketball, it's not going to stop kids being stabbed on the street.
What creates antisocial behaviour is having nothing to do.
It's lack of discipline in the home, lack of discipline in the home, and lack of policing on the streets, and a judiciary and a penal system that is utterly liberal.
You're going right to the end of the line. What about the preventative measures?
But what about the people that these people affect by running through a shopping centre and stampeding? When there's mothers with kids in prams frightened out of their lives, and we're worried about the social services aspect that's perhaps led to it.
You're talking about stick, right?
Yeah. So how long does your solution take to resolve it? Mine takes about 30 seconds. More police, bang them up. Yours...
Russell, should parents be fined?
More police, bang them up.
Absolutely, and the kids should be taken to task.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Tom Harwood. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. The Prime Minister has been speaking about the latest from Israel and Iran just a few minutes ago. Let's see what he said.
This was a dangerous and unnecessary escalation, which I've condemned in the strongest terms. Thanks to an international coordinated effort which the United Kingdom participated in, almost all of these missiles were intercepted, saving lives not just in Israel but in neighbouring countries like Jordan as well. The RAF sent additional planes to the region as part of our existing operations to counter Daesh in Iraq and Syria. I can confirm that our planes did shoot down a number of Iranian attack drones. I don't want to pay tribute to the bravery and professionalism of our pilots flying into the face of danger to protect civilians. The RAF moved additional planes into the region as part of our existing operations to counter Daesh in Iraq and Syria, and I can confirm that a number of Iranian attack drones were shot down, and we've paid tribute to the bravery and the professionalism of our pilots flying into the face of danger to protect civilians. I chaired a Cobra meeting on Friday to agree a plan of action.
The Prime Minister confirming that RAF jets have been in action and have brought down attack drones. Today marks the 30th anniversary of one of the greatest rumpuses in classical music history. The Night of the Hecklers. They stormed the Royal Opera House to boo an opera by atonal composer Sir Harrison Birtwistle. Atonal classical music usually describes compositions written from the early 20th century to the present day that lack a tonal centre or key. Music by Sir Harrison Birtwistle. The protesters claimed that there was little public appetite for atonal music, but that it had hijacked public funding. My next guest, composer and conductor Keith Burstein, was a co-founder of the Hecklers movement and believes that the dominance of the atonal movement makes it harder for other styles to emerge, inhibiting a reinvention of classical music. Keith Burstein, thank you very much for coming on Sunday to join us on GB News.
Pleasure.
So you organised this demonstration, this rumpus. Was it successful, looking back on it 30 years later? Did it make a point? Has it changed anything?
I think so, yes. I think it contributed to a change that was probably on the way and long overdue, because atonalism had already dominated for almost a century, even then in 1994, 30 years ago today, when we stormed the Royal Opera House. And a lot of us were beginning to think, hang on a minute, this is a long time for one musical style to dominate. And also there are a lot of composers who want to just write in a universal musical language, which we call tonality, which I actually think underpins all music everywhere. And is related to the harmonic series, which is a structure in nature. So if you sound a note, above it is vibrating an octave and then a fifth and a fourth. And that forms the natural harmonies that we call the tonic triad or G major scale. So what we think of as a human invention, music, and Mozart, Beethoven were writing according to academic rules. No, they weren't. Actually, we're all responding to something which is out there in the cosmos and which came about 14 billion years ago in the Big Bang. So this is the original wavelengths of sound. Sound is an energy in the universe, and it has actually the innately tonal structure. So when composers decided they were going to write in a way that was deviant to that, we're going to use criteria which were not really naturally aligned with that, they produced music which is very fascinating. It was a legitimate experiment, but it lost the audience because normal music-loving humanity just thought, well, that sounds more like noise. I mean, you know when you're walking down the street and you hear the noise of the street and then you hear the sound of music coming out of a restaurant. How do you know which is which? There's something which tells the brain straight away, that's music, that's noise. Now, if you write music which sounds more like noise, people just look the other way.
Yeah, this is very fascinating because I've often wondered, how it is that novelists have to write novels that the public will buy, filmmakers have to make films that the public will go and watch. But in the world of classical music, apparently for rather a long time, it's been possible for composers to write atonal music, which doesn't, as far as I can see, and as far as you can see, have an audience.
Well, that's right, and I think, if I dare say it, the key to the answer of why, which you seem to be driving at, is public subsidy. So, in other words, there was a system which is there, which was very well intended, which is that the arts should be supported, got controlled by those people who rather dogmatically believe that the public should be given what is good for them, rather than what we actually enjoy, which I think is a didactic principle, sort of a Rethian principle that was rather embedded at the BBC. And so the head of music at Radio 3 was entitled the controller of music, which you know would be difficult to make up even if you were an Orwellian genius. And I asked one of them, Nicholas Kenyon, once how he chose what to broadcast. He just said, it's my whim, what I like.
Nicholas Kenyon comes on this programme quite a lot. Perhaps we should invite him in to comment on that. I don't want to finish our piece without hearing some of your music. Let's hear a piece of music and then you can tell us about it after we've heard it. Keith, first of all, tell me a little bit about that music and when the public can hear that music.
Well, I was commissioned to write that about 6 months ago by a patron of the Royal College of Music, who's also a patron of mine, Mark Redman, and I've written a series of works for him. We both hold to a belief, and actually we met through Vladimir Ashkenazi, who supported my work from about 2007. And he said to me when I met him, is your music very atonal? And because he said, all I hear is atonal, atonal, atonal. I said, no, it's very tonal. I couldn't believe it, my luck. And so he supported me ever since. Through him, I met Mark Redman. Mark Redman has been supporting my work. And so every time I write a piece of music, I'm really doing the thing which a composer is just not supposed to do, which is write a tune. So you'll hear that the music is driven by melody. And melody was kind of verboten under the atonal paradigm. You simply weren't allowed to write tunes. Think about that. You weren't allowed to write tunes.
You think that classical music should reinvent itself, but without going towards atonality. So how can there be a reinvention? I mean, honestly, didn't, Mozart and Beethoven and Wagner do it all?
Well, that's the extraordinary thing about tonality, as I was describing, what I call deep tonality, is that it comes from this genome of music, which is a sort of a sub-grammar of music. So in other words, you can never go forward or back. It's just eternally reproducing itself. And yes, we do have to actually represent our own time. But that's an intangible. Funnily enough, people often say to me, that was lovely, but you know what? Your music is modern. I sort of have this slight anxiety. Will people think I'm plagiarising or going back? Well, of course, in a way, there's nothing new under the sun, so I don't worry about that. I just let my memory of the whole of music, but also contemporary music. I mean, I love Stormzy. I love Amy Winehouse. I love Taylor Swift. And these people are all influencing me. And what you have to do is just be open. That's all you have to do. Just let everything come in and then make a kind of beautiful synthesis.
You've come into the Taylor Swift headquarters in Paddington here. I am the chairman. You didn't quite tell us, though, there's a performance of your music tomorrow. Where?
Oh, no, that was actually a week ago, and that was there.
We missed it. Yeah. I beg your pardon.
Yeah, but there's another performance of that work in June.
Where?
It's at a church in Islington. I'm yet to be told, actually.
Right.
I'll let you know.
That'd be great. Keith Burstein, thank you very much indeed. In a few minutes, I'll be discussing the art of letter writing. But before that, news headlines with Sam Francis.
Michael, thank you very much and good afternoon from the newsroom at 12:30 exactly, and we start with some breaking news. The Prime Minister confirming in the last half hour that RAF jets were used to intercept and shoot down Iranian attack drones and missiles fired on Israel overnight. Iran is now threatening to launch a much larger attack if Israel retaliates. And Iranian state media has also carried a warning for the US, saying American bases would be targeted if Washington backs any Israeli military response. Almost all the drone strikes were taken out without any significant damage. However, a small number did reach Israel, critically injuring a 7-year-old girl and causing some damage to an army base. Israel now says it is poised for further aggression. Well, speaking a short time ago, the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak paid tribute to the British pilots involved in last night's operation.
This was a dangerous and unnecessary escalation, which I've condemned in the strongest terms. Thanks to an international coordinated effort which the United Kingdom participated in, almost all of these missiles were intercepted, saving lives not just in Israel but in neighbouring countries like Jordan as well. The RAF sent additional planes to the region as part of our existing operations to counter Daesh in Iraq and Syria. I can confirm that our planes did shoot down a number of Iranian attack drones. I don't want to pay tribute to the bravery and professionalism of our pilots flying into the face of danger.
The family of a man who killed 6 people in a stabbing spree at a shopping centre in Sydney has described his actions as truly horrific. Police believe 40-year-old Joel Couchy suffered from schizophrenia and used drugs including methamphetamine and psychedelics. His family released a statement in support of the police officer who shot and killed him, saying she was only doing her job. And the Duke of Kent is stepping down as Colonel of the Scots Guards after 50 years. The Duke is meeting members of the Guards there, ending his time overseeing the prestigious regiment. Edward, who was a cousin of Queen Elizabeth II, will now hand the role over to the Duke of Edinburgh. And the 88-year-old says that holding the position has been a true honour. For the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
It's the first time we've had an admission from someone who, these used to be very senior in the party, saying that this election is not about winning, really, for the Conservatives now. It's about mitigating the losses.
There is broad recognition that this election has already been lost and that it's about damage limitation. And it is really important because it's the difference between whether, if Labour win a slim majority, then the fight is on for the next election. I know it seems silly to look 5 years ahead, but it does make a difference, versus basically accepting that we have 10 years of Labour government ahead.
Having an acknowledgement that the Tories are going to lose and lose badly, disastrously maybe, having that acknowledgement coming from somebody so senior is very demoralising for everybody else in the party, but also doesn't it make it then look rather immoral for them to just drag on right through to maybe November?
Personally, I think Rishi Sunak should name the date now. I think he should name it for October or November.
In terms of reform, if they're only 4 points behind the Conservatives in the latest poll, do we need to stop the narrative, which we have been using legitimately, saying, well, they're doing all right in the polls, but they won't win any seats? Do we need to change that perspective now?
I think it's really difficult to say. It depends on Reform's electoral strategy. There's a lot of evidence that in certain parts of the country with certain demographics, they do have a really good chance. So I think if they target seats in the Red Wall and other places where there's big disillusionment with the Conservatives and what they'd promised, I can't imagine that Reform are at the stage where they could take masses of seats. It's more about that portion of the vote that they'll be taking away that I think is going to result in that massive Labour landslide.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Last week, Royal Mail announced its plans to deliver second-class mail only every other day, striking another blow against the art of letter writing. Campaigners criticised Royal Mail for not promoting or valuing letter writing and are questioning how the art will be passed on to a younger generation. Joining me now is the founder of London Letters, Jennifer Bishop. Jennifer, welcome to GB News. What do you think is lost if people don't write letters?
Oh gosh, so much. I think letter writing has an ability to connect you with your recipient in a way that modern technology just cannot recreate in any way whatsoever. There's, first of all, someone's handwriting. That's such a personal and unique thing to yourself. The ability to express that and to send it on to someone else just isn't something that can be replicated anywhere else. And I absolutely think that letter writing is something that deserves to be encouraged and promoted for fear of losing it.
I very much agree with you, although I don't write a tremendous number of letters. I write thank you letters, and I love to receive thank you letters. And I think there is something very special about those. I wonder, though, this is very much a generational thing. I mean, I'm talking here to quite a young person, Jennifer. But, you know, my generation values letter writing. Presumably, it's pretty much disappeared in younger generations, has it?
Well, I think I would be an example that it hasn't disappeared. And
Yes.
so in my company, we centre our business around the joy of letter writing. And one of those aspects that we promote is a pen pal club. And I'm encouraged and optimistic about the future of letter writing because we have an awful lot of younger people coming through that want to join our pen pal club. So I'm seeing, I would say, the majority of our members are sort of between 35 to 55 years old, let's say. However, there's a growing amount, a really encouraging amount of people that are coming through in their really early 20s, which I find really fascinating because these are going to be people that have possibly never received a handwritten letter before. Yet they're intrigued enough to sign up to a pen pal club where they could write to a stranger only through the method of letter writing.
I wonder whether it's going to be something like, you know, the BBC and the Conservative Party, a thing that people come to later in life, even though they don't suspect it. I've been looking here at just some small extracts from Byron's letters. My heart, we are thus far separated, but after all, 1 mile is as bad as 1,000. Which is a great consolation to one who must now travel 600 before he meets you again. If it will give you any satisfaction, I am as comfortless as a pilgrim with peas in his shoe, and as cold as charity or chastity or any other virtue. Isn't that absolutely splendid?
Yeah.
Or here, is there anything on earth or heaven would have made me so happy as to have made you mine long ago, and not less now than then, but more than ever at this time. You know I would with pleasure give up all here and all beyond the grave for you. Imagine receiving a letter like that.
How powerful are those words? And can you imagine receiving a WhatsApp message like that? You know, it just doesn't happen. And that's exactly where letter writing has a place and a position. It's, you know, it's not so much, we're not going to be writing letters anymore to update people about our daily news or how our work day has gone anymore. We're saving special things for letters now, and that's where their place is in, like, alongside today's modern society and technology. So, you know, love letters, they're so special, and like, how can you portray your emotions through, you know, a text message or an email? It's such an impersonal way of communicating that a letter that you've taken time over to engage with your feelings and really consider what you want to say and make that recipient feel when they receive your words. You know, there's a powerful connection there, and that's something that needs to be treasured and also protected for the future.
I think the materials are important too. I mean, I love a thick or a glossy piece of paper with its matching envelope. I love a beautifully illustrated postcard, a postcard that's been chosen because it has some importance to the recipient. By the way, a birthday card which is suitable for the recipient. Yes. The materials are important as well as what is written inside, don't you think?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm a huge fan of stationery, and we make stationery at London Letters, and one of our focuses is on the quality of the paper. I think that's so important, and I think there's so much available in terms of stationery at the moment that our focus is always on the thickness of the paper. I love a good heavyweight paper. I love it to be smooth. I want my fountain pen to work nicely and not bleed. And I think the stationery that someone has chosen, it really says something about your personality as well. So when you're writing a letter to someone or you're sending a birthday card, it's not only are you thinking of your recipient in mind, but it's also an expression of yourself and the things that you value as well. And I think stationery is, I'm a huge addict of stationery. I could never have enough pens or notepads myself. My drawer's full of them. But I think it's one of the lovely parts about letter writing as well, is getting to pick what stationery you're going to use.
I very much hope that your enthusiasm for stationery and for letter writing may be infectious, and that people may have been stimulated by what you said to us here today on GB News. Thank you very much indeed, Jennifer Bishop. Well, more toiling in the vineyard for me after the break, as I'll be meeting a connoisseurs and uncorking some bottles in a fluid discussion of post-Brexit wine taxes. Stay with us, please.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. So it's been a bit of a drier start for many of us this morning, all thanks to an area of high pressure situated out towards the south and the west of the UK. However, low pressure never too far away from the north, and this will bring us some blustery winds and plenty of showers that we can already see out there through this morning. These will slowly push their way eastwards as we go through the rest of this afternoon, but further south where we see that higher pressure, it has been quite a bright start, but there is a bit of hazy sunshine as we head through the afternoon, and some further cloud bubbling up, and that could lead to 1 or 2 showers across parts of Wales and northern England. Heavier showers further north though, and with those blustery winds, temperatures around 9 or 10 degrees, but further south, not quite as warm as Saturday. Through the rest of this evening, those showers continue to push in from the west, always heaviest across northern and western parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, and they slowly spread their way south and eastwards as we go through the early hours of Monday morning. Perhaps some dry weather for a time across the far southeast, but it will be turning wet everywhere by the start of Monday. A chilly night again, temperatures in the south around 7 or 8 degrees, but even chillier still across the north in the low single figures. So a very chilly start to the day on Monday. Those heaviest bands of showers push their way towards the south and the east through Monday morning, leaving some sunny spells as we head into the afternoon, but there will still be plenty of showers around. These could even turn to snow across the Pennines and the high ground of Scotland. With a brisk northwesterly breeze, it will be feeling chilly as well, with highs in the south around 13 degrees.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. The breakfast bar in front of me has been adorned by bottles and glasses of wine, and they're here merely as an aid to discussion of the complex post-Brexit tax rules which charge duty according to alcohol content, resulting in price rises for UK wine drinkers. British consumers have been told that the price of some red wines could increase by more than 40 pence next year, and retailers say that the administrative burden will be crippling. My guest is the CEO and founder of Mouse and Grape, Jessica Summer.
Hello, Michael.
Lovely to see you.
Lovely to see you again,
lovely
too.
to have you on the programme again. Let's discuss the issue.
Yeah.
So on any bottle, just pass me a bottle if you would, it will tell us what is the alcohol content.
Yes.
This one, for example, is 14.5.
Yeah.
So that's going to have a hefty tax in future.
It will, yes, very much so.
And is it that sort of every tenth of a degree is going to be a different amount of tax?
So it's by 1 degree, yes. So it's, yeah, exactly as you've said.
So 14.5 will be different from 14.4?
Exactly. So, no, it would be 14.5 and 14.5 and 13.5. So it will change in those ways.
OK, but nonetheless, the wine seller has to say, gosh, I sold 40 bottles of 14.5, and that's one tax rate, and I sold 60 bottles of 12.5, and that's another tax rate.
Yes.
And this brilliant idea was introduced by a Conservative government, wasn't
Exactly, yeah. So there are so many issues with this, and the biggest one really, I mean, actually, they're all big, but one of the biggest ones, I think, is the fact that wine is agricultural. So it differs year on year, vintage on vintage, and it's impossible to say how much alcohol an ABV is going to be. And also, the winemakers are not going to necessarily know what the ABV is going to be when the merchants are buying the wine, because it all happens later on. And also, if you are bringing in wines from abroad, and say if you want to bring in a mixed case of different wines, how are you going to know what wines you're bringing in? So it's a logistical and an administrative nightmare.
And this is really going to happen, is it?
Well,
Because, I mean, the arguments you've just put to me seem to me, you know, from my experience of government, those are the arguments that would get sorted out on the way through. Civil servants would say, oh, yes, we didn't realise that was going to be a complexity. Let's put this right, let's put that right. But are you saying this is really what's going to happen?
Well, I think the WSTA and wine is the Wine and Spirits Trust, and so they are basically lobbying, and they're the independent trade body for the wine industry. And they've done so much research and lobbying around this, and there's just no plus point here. It's not going to bring the government more money, and it's going to bring wine merchants and the consumer more problems, because
is it a bit of nanny statism? Is it charging us more for the amount of alcohol? I mean, in order to kind of encourage us to drink 12.5 rather than 14.5?
I think so. But in reality, all you're going to do, if people are drinking wine on the sole purpose that they want to get drunk or have the volume of alcohol, they'll just drink more. So if you basically are just focusing on something really minor here, rather than getting into the fact that wine is so unique and it's so complex, and it's just not going to work, because you should be doing it based on volume rather than ABV.
You brought some wines in. I can't help noticing. What would you like me to taste?
So we'll start off with our Riesling, and this actually is a really good example, because this is one which is going to go down, because this wine here, it is 8.5%.
Good heavens.
Yes. So it's an off-dry Riesling, and it's going to go down by 42p. And
is it here in front of me?
So yes, it's going to be your first one there, Michael.
Yeah.
And the thing is, as well, I think that there is a misconception here that the winemakers and the retailers are being greedy, and they're going to be taking the money here. But really, the margins on wine are so small that you're really going to be like strangling the small independents and the wine buyers at this time. So I think the consumer might have a misconception that we're just hiking up prices, but it's not the case.
I understand that. It's not good for your public relations. And are you going from a situation where before the tax on a bottle of wine was pretty much standard?
So it's standard at the moment.
Standard?
Yes. Yeah, it's standard.
So this fresh new hell that you're moving into is, by comparison, with the tax on each bottle just been the same.
It's £2.67 at the moment, and that is the same.
How straightforward, how simple.
Yeah, 11.5 all the way up to 14.5.
Much too simple to leave in place.
I know, and I think also because there's been an easement at the moment, and that's what we're trying to encourage the government to make permanent. They've made it temporary, but the thing is, these issues are not going to change. So I don't understand the temporary measure when the wine industry it's the same. And I think they are simplifying the wine industry compared to the likes of the cider or the spirits industry, which is much easier to determine that ABV, and less variety as well. So,
number 2.
So number 2 is a Spanish Rioja.
Oh.
Yes, white Rioja.
What alcohol are we talking about here?
So this one here, we're talking about 12.5%. So this wine here is going to be going up by 44p.
Which is a pity, because I could drink that
I know.
happily all summer's afternoon.
Yeah. It is absolutely delicious. Much more full body. It's got lovely melon flavours, and yeah, absolutely delicious.
That is a delicious wine.
Yeah.
I mean, I may part company of the wines now, because I can see we're going to get on to higher volumes of alcohol.
Yes.
What about this fellow here? What's this?
So this one here, that is our Bordeaux, which is a mouse and grape favourite. It was in my Christmas hampers, and it is 13%. So it's a Cabernet Sauvignon, and this one here will be going up by 54p. So massive percentages here in terms of that increase, and also
54p on roughly how much does that retail for?
So this one retails for £24.95.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's
going to be an increase of £2. Yeah, 6-7 exactly. So
now that is a delicious wine.
It is, yeah.
And I could also imagine drinking it over a period of time and not feeling too heady and not feeling too bad in the morning either.
Yeah.
So I suspect you have held your big boy.
I have, yeah.
For last.
I have. And something that I'd just like to say on this as well, because this is the type of wine that will age really well, and also the kind of wine which can be bought in bond or can be bought at other times. So you don't know when the import tax is going to be paid on it. So yes, as you said, we have our last wine, which is a Primitivo Puglia, and this is our 14.5, so our big wine.
Yeah, that is a big wine.
Yes, it's got lovely jammy, kind of black fruit flavours. Absolutely delicious here.
And that's going up by?
So this will be going up by 86p. Yeah, which is a lot of money.
86p.
Yeah.
Dawn is here. Dawn, would you like a little glass of something?
How very strange. I should just emerge just as wine being poured. Thank you very much.
Now, Dawn, you're on very shortly. I
am.
Provided you don't drink too much of this, of course. Well, what's on your programme?
We're actually drinking Angela Rayner style, which involves slightly more alcohol than this. So we're having some fun with Ms. Rayner. We're also having a kitchen nightmare with Gordon Ramsay.
Yes.
As you do.
What does that mean?
Well, you'll have to stay tuned and find out, won't you?
All right.
The idea, Michael, is to get you watching, OK?
It is indeed. Things have got a little bit worse for Angela Rayner.
They have, haven't they?
This aide of hers who's given this evidence.
Yes.
Gosh, with friends like that.
Yes, well, he did sign a non-disclosure agreement, didn't he? And then wrote a book about a diva who was a former union official who went on to be a MP. I can't think who he's possibly talking about.
Isn't it amazing the things that happen? Very, very good, Dawn. You'll be on at 1 o'clock. So, Jennifer, a bit of a nightmare for you. You're hoping that this won't be implemented just as it is. How is Mouse and Grape doing, and where do we come across Mouse and Grape?
So Mouse and Grape is doing very well, thank you, Michael. So you can find me at mouseandgrape.com, and where you can buy my hampers, and also you can book me for my tasting events as well.
Yes, and people know what your tasting events are like because they've just seen you taking me through these absolutely delicious wines. Dawn, good luck with your programme.
Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Jessica, for coming on
Michael.
again. Jessica Summer. Thank you indeed to all of you, to all of my guests for coming to the studio on a Sunday. I'm always so grateful when people do that. I'll be back at the same time next week. Until then, and many of my programmes end this way, I'm afraid. Cheers, and enjoy the week ahead.
Cheers.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good afternoon. Welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. So higher pressure out towards the south does bring us some more settled conditions for a time this afternoon, but low pressure situated out towards the north of the UK slowly moves its way towards us through the rest of the weekend and into the start of the new week. In the south, though, we will be holding on to those drier conditions for a time this afternoon. Perhaps a bit of late hazy sunshine around, but it's in the northwest that we see those strongest winds and some blustery showers pushing their way south and eastwards through the early hours of Monday morning. The showers always heaviest across northern and western parts, and we could even see some snow across the hills, and that will lead to quite a chilly night with temperatures in the low single figures here, and even further south not reaching much above 7 or 8 degrees. So a chilly but blustery start to the day on Monday. The heaviest bands of showers clear their way south and eastwards through Monday morning, leaving some sunny spells as we head in towards the afternoon. There will still be plenty of showers around though, and again these could turn to snow across the Pennines, Lake District and across the high ground of Scotland, and with a brisk northwesterly breeze it will be feeling very chilly, highs in the south not reaching much above 12 or 13 degrees. Tuesday does start a little bit drier for most of us. There will still be a few showers around across Northern Ireland, Wales and northern parts of Scotland, but the best of the sunshine across central northern parts of England and much of mainland Scotland as well. A few showers around still on Wednesday, but there are hints of higher pressure returning later in the week and something a little bit milder on the way.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
This is your chance to win our biggest prize of the year so far. First, there's a totally tax-free £10,000 in cash for you to spend this summer. Then, we want to send you on a bespoke 7-night small boat cruise for two worth £10,000. Thanks to Variety Cruises, you'll be able to choose from any of their 2025 Greek adventures and discover Greece like never before. And with flights, meals, drinks and excursions included, all you have to do is relax. We'll also give you these terrific travel treats. For another chance to win a prize worth over £20,000, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB04 PO Box 8690